With war raging in Israel and Gaza, it just brings to mind that this is not the first time this has happened. This region, this place in the world called the Middle East, and particularly Israel, Jerusalem, what the Bible calls the Holy Land, the Promised Land, is an area of volatility, battles, and wars from the beginning of time. Why? Going back to biblical times, you see the wars fought by Abraham and then the subsequent generations. The Jewish people as they were leaving Egypt and coming back to Israel. More wars. And it's never ending. Every empire, every country felt the importance of conquering and controlling the land of Israel. After the Jewish people built the first temple, so you have the Assyrians and then the Babylonians destroying the first temple. After the second temple, then you have the Romans. In between, over and under, you have the Persians, you have the Greeks, you have the Syrians. Then with the rise of Christianity, began the wars, the Roman wars, later the Crusades, to control Israel and Jerusalem. And then with the birth of Islam, the wars between Islam and Christianity. And of course, Jews are always smack in the middle because they're the original inhabitants of this land of Israel. So what's going on here? What's the root of all of this? As I said, if it was a one-time event, okay, people are fighting over land, over resources, over control. But it's very clear that this is a far bigger picture here. This no way is minimizing or taking away from the tragedy of October 7th and the atrocities perpetrated against innocent men, women, and children, and all the deaths of innocent people now. Just because it's happened before, this doesn't mean, oh, okay, business as usual. No, absolutely not. But it behooves us to look at the bigger picture. And it's something that many of us don't really do. The Western world, especially, the secular Western world, is very loath at looking at the historical roots. I would even say the religious roots. Because this is a religious war at the end of the day. If it was a business negotiation, so you negotiate and you come to some compromise. But you see here the absolute fanaticism, extremism, from the river to the sea. I mean, why does the Muslim world mind if a little sliver of land among the hundreds and thousands of millions of, hundreds of thousands of square miles that the Arab Muslim world has, let the Jews have their little piece of land? So that's what we want to address. As I said, people are loath. We think religious wars, these historical wars, are a thing of the past, but they're not. It's very clearly not. 9/11 brought it home to the United States with the attacks on the World Trade Center and on the Pentagon. So this is really a matter that affects us all. And in some ways, if you can get to the root of an issue, you can often find the solution, the antidote to cure the problem. Not to suggest that it's easy. So let's delve into this. The nations of the world as we see them today, and I'm specifically talking about the three major religions, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism in the opposite order, starting with Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, all can trace their roots to the home of Abraham. Abraham, in the Bible, had a son called Ishmael, who would become the ancestor of the Arab world, which would later become the Muslim world. Though not every Arab is Muslim, not every Muslim is Arab, but that region. Muhammad brought to the Arab world Islam. His son, Abraham's son Isaac, the ancestor of the Jewish people. Isaac in turn had two children, Esau and Jacob. Esau, grandson, is Rome. Rome would become, of course, the Roman Empire, the bastion of the Western Christian world, once Constantine embraced Christianity. And Jacob, the son of Isaac, continues the Jewish line. So there you have Shishmael, Esau, Jacob. And you see battles right in the Bible. They're beginning to fight right there. So let's find out, what were they fighting about? And then you'll understand that those wars between individuals became archetypal wars that ultimately evolved into the national confrontations between these three major forces. Now I know you could say, what about the whole East? We talk about China and India and the Far East. So interestingly, they're also part of the equation. Abraham had children that he sent to the East. But the main focus we hear is on the Middle East and the factions. And what are they all fighting over? Always around Israel and Jerusalem. Some fixation. So what's going on here? So you could say, well, this is the most ancient region in the world. That's where the cradle of civilization, Mesopotamia, that whole part of the world. But it's much more than that. In the biblical words, this is the Holy Land, the Promised Land. What does that mean? Everyone agrees it's the Holy Land. So in the words of Jacob, when he had his famous dream, he fell asleep, the dream of the ladder, when he woke up, he realized, he said, this is the gate to heaven. Jerusalem, the Temple Mount, Israel in general, is an interface between heaven and earth. And the battle is who's going to control that interface. Abraham, keep in mind, introduced into a pagan world the idea of one God. And that God expects morality and ethics and human rights from us. That each of us is created in the divine image. And as such, and I'm quoting the Declaration of Independence, though it wouldn't be written for thousands of years, till around 250 years ago, that all people are created equal and all are endowed with absolute rights by the Creator. But that was not a given throughout history. Abraham was a complete pioneer in this regard. Even in his time, this was not embraced. It was actually a threat to all the powers that be. So there begins the first issue. Introducing a higher reality, a higher consciousness, accountability to a calling that is not your own self-interest. Because the natural gravitation of every human being is self-interest. Richard Dawkins, the selfish gene. It's inherent. Me, survival of the fittest. Comes in Abraham and says, no. We all have that inclination, but there's something greater. And therefore we have to dedicate ourselves to a life of service. We're not here to just serve ourselves. We're here to serve the higher cause. To be moral, to be kind, to be just, to be generous, to be charitable. And that's what he introduced. Long story short, he was a threat to his culture. Because the leaders were not interested in a person like that. They felt they had control. And why would they want to give control or create a situation where everybody is equal in the eyes of God? They were God, or they were closest to God, the children of God, as many kings and monarchs throughout history believed. And this was the prevalent thinking throughout history in all parts of the world. It is only 250 years ago, think of it, only 250 years, where it was institutionalized this principle that Abraham taught, that all men are created equal, all people are created equal, everyone in the divine image, we all have these rights. This was not a given. So Abraham, a complete single man, and his wife Sarah, the only two, introduced this concept, and their children, the Jewish people, that would become the Jewish nation, embraced it. But Abraham taught it to everyone. At that time, there was no such thing as Jews and non-Jews. It was a message, it was a doctrine, if you wish, a mandate, that Abraham taught and embraced. All his children, Yishmael and his grandchildren, all heard this message. But it's not such an easy one, because how do you balance that type of selfless calling of turning this world into a divine home with your own selfish interests? What happens when there's a clash between the two? And there's always a clash. Who wins? Do you go to war? So there was an imbalance among Abraham's children in the sense of how they should embrace it. Because the challenge is, when you're very deeply spiritual and deeply godly, and then you see people involved in pettiness and the corruption that it brings, what do you do with this collision course? So one approach is live and let it be. But if you're really a godly person, you say, my mission is to inspire, to transform. What do I do when I have people who are opposing me? So one approach is, you go to war. Yishmael and Esav, each in their own way, were very aggressive spiritualists. But there was another approach, and that is the approach of balance. You inspire. Just to share an example, the Talmud tells us that when Rabbi Simon Bar Yochai, the great sage, he had to hide from the Romans who had decreed you're not allowed to study and teach Torah. So for 12 years he hid in a cave with his son, away from civilization. During that time he prayed, he studied, he became an extremely refined person. When they finally came out after 12 years from the cave, from hiding, so they saw civilization, they returned to the world, they saw the pettiness, the nonsense, the superficiality, the corruption. So the Talmud tells us whatever Rabbi Simon Bar Yochai looked at began to burn, because he couldn't tolerate it. His very spiritual fervor and passion destroyed everything around him. Whether it means physically or figuratively. So God tells Rabbi Simon Bar Yochai, you're not ready yet. You're not mature enough. Go back one more year, 113th bar mitzvah year, and learn the art of transforming instead of destroying. And that's what happened. After the 13th year, Rabbi Simon Bar Yochai, Rashbi, came back, and whatever he saw that was flawed, whatever needed repair, he repaired. Now you would think he was on a higher level after 12 years, because he was so full of light that everything else disturbed him, and he essentially annihilated anything that was in his path, that was anti-God, that was antithetical to godliness, to goodness. That's not the way. God said, don't destroy my world. Transform it, inspire it. And this, my friends, was the problem. Abraham was a very passionate, divine person, and he taught that to his children. But passion always needs discipline, needs seasoning, needs balance, needs moderation. Not to compromise it, not to dilute it, but to channel it. The sun is a very powerful force, but you need sunglasses, you need shades, you need filters. A teacher can be brilliant, but the teacher needs what is called the tzimtzum, concealment, diminishment, in order to channel and spoon-feed the ideas to a student, especially a beginner. Yishmael was a wild man, the Bible tells us. He is lacking boundaries. He was taking Abraham's message and just everywhere without any proper discipline, without proper harmony. Esav, in his way, was a warrior. Very aggressive. On the other hand, Isaac and Jacob in turn, they were scholars. They were gentle. Ish Tom Yoshev Aholim, it says about Jacob. He was a wholesome person, an innocent person. So you can imagine there's a clash going on between these brothers. Different ways of how to channel and how to apply, I should say, Abraham's teachings to a pagan world, to a corrupt world. And unfortunately, both Yishmael and Esav, each in their own way, used aggressive means, to the point some of them, Esav himself became corrupt as well, without the balance. So the wars have been being fought from the beginning of time. In the language of Kabbalah, there's chesed. Chesed is kindness. Chesed is light. Chesed is a flow. However, chesed needs gvura to balance it. Gvura is seasoning, is balance, is harmony, is is channeling, disciplining that energy. And Tiferes is the third, creates the balance and the harmony. That was what was lacking. Jacob was Tiferes. Abraham was Chesed. Isaac was Gvura. Abraham's son, Yishmael, was too much Chesed. Too much love. No boundaries. Esau, the son of Isaac, was too much discipline. Too aggressive in his discipline to the point of violence. And it was Jacob that created the balance between the two. And that's the story of life. Like the 13th year. You see something that's wrong, don't ignore it, but inspire, educate, teach. Let's now move the clock forward. Comes the revelation at Sinai. At Sinai, God says, now that you, the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, have embraced my path of virtue, and you found the right balance, I am ready to give you the Torah, which is called Tiferes, the third balanced approach, also called beauty, harmony within diversity. My mandate, it's called the Torah. He actually first offered it to the children of Yishmael and to the children of Esau, because they're also children of Abraham and Isaac. But they rejected it. No, they couldn't accept. Do not steal, do not murder, other prohibitions, sexual ones. They were not ready yet. That's what we're told. So why did God offer it to them? Because one day they would become ready. So as the Jewish people embraced the Torah, the rest of the world remained more or less pagan. But time would pass. And in time, the teachings of Abraham would ultimately affect his other children as well. And indeed, when the Roman Western world embraced Christianity, Rome, grandson of Esau, is embracing the essential teachings of Abraham. 6 centuries later, with the birth of Islam, Muhammad, bringing to the pagan children of Yishmael the teachings that Abraham taught Yishmael. And they begin to find some balance. Not completely, that's why there were the wars. What were the wars about? The wars are, how do we bring a God into a world that is so antithetical to God? Some thought only by force. Holy wars. Hence comes the idea of holy wars, religious wars, the Crusades. And what are they trying to fight for? The place where is the interface between heaven and earth? Israel, Jerusalem. The fact that they're all originating from brothers, we're all cousins. Ishmael and Isaac are brothers. Esau and Ishmael and Esau and Jacob are brothers. And they're all related to each other. Was lost for so many centuries. But what happens in time? And again, fast forward. For close to, I would say, 1800 years, the Christian world was very aggressive. Against Jews for sure, against Muslims, against anyone. Forced conversion, because they thought this is what God wants. Of course, it became corrupt, power, control. But finally, with the birth of the United States of America, religious freedom was born. True freedoms. Tolerance and acceptance of other religions. So we see, as time passed, the teachings of Abraham did ultimately affect the world. And the United States is not today an exception. These ideas began to spread throughout the world, in Europe and other countries. You go to a website called Freedom House, and they show you the trajectory of how many countries have become free. There's still work to be done, but the trajectory is very clear. That the reconciliation of the divine and the secular has become more and more harmonious. There's work to be done, as I said, and there's still wars raging. So I have no doubt the same will happen with Islam. Just as Christianity was tamed, Islam will be tamed. They will ultimately discover the proper balance. There are many Muslims that follow my programs. I always ask, and I remember doing a recording a few months ago, a video, a call to my Muslim cousins and friends. What would Abraham say? Abraham prayed for infidels. He said, learn to integrate, learn to inspire, don't kill them. When you read the writings of Khattab, Sayyid Khattab, the godfather, one of the founders of modern Muslim fundamentalism, he was the mentor of Osama bin Laden and many other Muslim fundamentalists. What does he say? And he was a scholar, wrote many volume commentary on the Quran. He says, first God chose the Jewish people, and they failed at the mission of turning this world into a divine home. Then he chose the Christians, and they failed. And then he chose the Muslims, and they are now the chosen people. So all that was promised to the Jews and to the Christians belongs to the Muslims, including Israel. And if they do not accept it willingly, you have to go to war, jihad, real violence. So his ideas are very compelling, but he calls for war. So you can imagine what impact it had on young, impressionable minds. Successful aristocrats, educated people. At the heart of it lies, that's why you find religious beliefs. That's why you find a mosque in every religious site. What's a mosque doing on the Temple Mount? What's a mosque doing in Bethlehem? Because that's a symbol that Islam is to control the world. Now, I'm not suggesting all Muslims agree about violence and war, but they're all sympathetic to that concept because it's part of the ideology. So there is a religious war at work here. It's not just a war over some resources or land or money or power. It's a religious war. Who is going to control the gate to heaven? So then how do we fight this war? We recognize its roots. Obviously, you fight a war on every possible level to protect the innocent. You have to do whatever it takes militarily and so on. But you can never forget what lies behind it all. So the only real response is don't kill our children. Don't kill our men and women. No. We, the Jewish people who are in the land of Israel, were given this land by God. God gave you other lands. We are brothers and cousins, all to fulfill one mission. No one wants a Muslim to become a Jew. But neither do you have to control the Jews. Everyone has their role in this bigger game plan. That's what we need to declare. Unfortunately, a type of, we'll call it docile, passive rationale does not speak to a passionate religious commitment. You can't just say, hey, everybody calm down. When there's religious passionate commitment, the answer has to be a passionate commitment to love more than your commitment to hate or to destruction or to destroy infidels or to destroy Jews or to destroy anyone that's in your way. That's the problem. To say, you know what? Let's all calm down. No. Be zealous, but be zealous in love. Be zealous in bringing God's message to the world like Abraham was, in a peaceful, beautiful way. Pray for infidels. So one of the big mistakes is we're saying, hey, look at these extremists. Let's not be extremists. Well, if you can convince them, great. You have to convince them with strength, with showing that you have a philosophy that's better and stronger than theirs. I'm not saying you're going to change anyone's mind, but the battle has to be won on an ideological level, on a religious level, on a spiritual level. This is critical in understanding these forces at work. Because of the Enlightenment, because of science, because of so much of the liberalism that has taken over our thinking, we think, you know what, let's just eliminate religious wars. It's a thing of the past. But it's not a thing of the past. Go to the Middle East and you're rudely awakened immediately. So it's a wake-up call. Yes, we need science. We need rationale. We need open inquiry. We need skepticism. But you're not going to eliminate faith. We need faith. Because for morality to thrive, we need to have an accountability to a higher calling. It cannot just be based on our rational logic. We saw what rational can lead. Look at what was a godless society like the Nazi Europe. Suddenly all the scientists, what they turned into monsters, using science to destroy. So we need both. And we need to find a balance between the both that's not aggressive. One does not need to destroy the other. Science does not need to destroy religion and faith faith does not need to destroy science. When Khattab visited the United States and he saw the decadence, Hollywood, Broadway, and so on, it just confirmed his ideas. But again, he called for violence, besides the fact that he was a rabid anti-Semite. We need balance. That's what we're calling for. So we need leaders that talk about this balance. We need leaders that are not just saying don't kill. We're not looking for just administrative, political, economic solutions or diplomatic solutions. No, we need a philosophy that is overriding, that everybody can embrace. Muslims, Christians, Jews, atheists, Buddhists, you name it. That all people are created equal. That we're all here in the divine image and we all need to support each other. We're all diverse forces in one large mosaic. The third path of balance, of harmony, of integration. We're not looking to turn everyone into one type. That's why Judaism does not advocate conversion. On the contrary, it rejects it. It dissuades anyone who wants to be a convert because Judaism says every one of you is created in the image of God. Figure out your way of your path to God. There's no need to compel and to impose our faith on others. Even peacefully, definitely not violently. All nations of the world will see the temple as its house of prayer, a light unto nations. So I speak as a Jew right now with deep pride. Never more have I been proud as a Jew. Because I see Abraham, my great-grandfather, looking at us all and saying, what's happened here? I have a path that I taught you children, my children. That path was ratified and confirmed and consummated at Sinai. Yes, it took years, but slowly it seeped into society. So most of the society today accepts certain ideas of human rights, and social equality, and all the values we cherish. But you seem not to have found that balance, Abraham is saying. Find those teachers, find those leaders that can help you find the balance. Learn how to serve God with love. Not just serving God with love, because when you love God, you love God's children. All His children. Muslim, Christian, Jewish, or anyone who may be. Why have you lost that point? At the same time, I am not trying to be naive and idealistic and say, let's forget about our enemy. No, they're real enemies. You have to lock your doors and you have to fight the wars because you have people calling for your death. And not only that, have acted on it, unfortunately, in the most tragic ways. May all those soldiers be protected. May the hostages be released. So we have to deal with that. But the bigger picture, what we're really fighting for, is not the elimination of anyone, not the elimination of Gazans, of Palestinians, of Arabs, of Muslims, of anyone, but to teach them to embrace God together. We're one family, 8 billion people of us. So when you go back to the roots, you can understand some of the factors that have led to where we are today. Now, I know you'll speak to most people fighting right now. They probably don't even know why they're fighting. Many have been brainwashed, many have been programmed. But at the root lies these tensions that I'm describing here, that have unfortunately turned into much more than tensions. But my firm hope and belief, and absolute, is that this will end well. We hope it happens faster, and with the least amount of casualties, the least amount of pain. But it will end, because the purpose of existence will be fulfilled. And if you look at the trajectory, as I mentioned, you see it's leading, it's improving. The world is very different today than it was before. So I just touched some of the surface of these ideas. I hope I laid out some of the basic building blocks. So the path forward is for us to educate ourselves on these matters. Please go to our website, meaningfullife.com. After 9/11, I did extensive research and extensive writing on these themes. The battles between the brothers, between the cousins, as those battles evolved. Check it out. We have whole sections in our website on this topic. Educate yourself and educate others. And use your forces of inspiration. Let's inspire each other. You see someone that's doing something wrong, even on a microcosmic level. Find a way to do it in a loving, inspiring way. Obviously, if you have to self-defense, and protecting yourself always comes first. But the big picture is not just to defend yourself, it's to rehabilitate, to transform the enemy, transform the perceived enemy or the real enemy through inspiration, through education, through teaching. I can tell you, I'm not ready to say that I've changed millions of minds, but I've changed enough minds, when I say in a positive way, that they've seen a different way of looking at this whole picture. That Muslims and Jews and Christians and everyone are really brothers. And if you get down to it, we may be believing in the same thing, but we have to learn how to balance it. Because passion, like fire, if it's not harnessed, can destroy. But as I said, the good news is, as we're told, that there will be no longer evil and destruction on my holy mountain, that's Israel, but also in the whole world, because the world will be filled with divine knowledge as the waters cover the sea. All nations of the world will serve one God. The swords will be transformed into plowshares, and hundreds of other such prophecies that will be fulfilled and have already been fulfilled. Technology allows us to fill the world with divine knowledge, not just knowledge, divine knowledge. We need knowledge, we need science, but we need a divine knowledge, the humility, a knowledge combined with accountability, with sensitivity, without arrogance, a knowledge that also focuses on the morality, our responsibility, not just a neutral scientific knowledge, but responsibility and accountability to each other, to God, to the higher purpose, and learning how to express and apply that in all the diverse ways that each one of us contributes to this large cosmic symphony. May we merit to see that symphony being played with world peace, no more famine, no more war, no more pain, only permanent and forever the harmony within diversity, where the gate to heaven and earth become integrated. E equals MC squared, energy and matter, spirituality and materialism in one seamless fusion through personal and global redemption. Thank you so much. This has been Simon Jacobson, meaningfullife.com is our website. Please subscribe to our various offerings. Check it out, a wide array of materials. Subscribe to our growing and robust YouTube channel. Please share if you see fit. And please, love to hear your feedback, your comments, your questions, your suggestions. Be blessed and be well, and we will see a beautiful world. There's much beauty already, but that beauty will be everywhere, in every corner of the world, in every moment of time, in every human being on this planet. Thank you so much.
This program is brought to you by the Meaningful Life Center. Please help us continue our programs. Make even a small contribution at meaningfullife.com/donate.